In a stunning and deeply emotional revelation, former First Lady Esther Lungu has made public the final request of her late husband, former President Edgar Lungu. It wasn't about power or legacy, but about one man, Hakainde Hichilema. According to Esther, Lungu made it clear, "Do not let HH attend my funeral." What could have caused such a bitter divide between two former heads of state? What does this say about Zambia's political landscape today? In this documentary, we unpack the emotional, political, and national implications of this shocking final wish. In a stunning revelation that has left Zambia both shocked and divided, former First Lady Esther Lungu has broken her silence on the late President Edgar Lungu's final days. According to her, Edgar Lungu made one last deeply personal request, that President Hakainde Hichilema should not attend his funeral. But why would a former head of state, a man who once shook hands with HH as a fellow leader, make such a request? Was it grief, pride, or something darker, like betrayal, exile, and fear? Today on InspirAfrica Official, we take you inside the emotional, political, and controversial story behind Lungu's final wish, and what it says about the state of Zambia today. Esther Lungu, the former First Lady of Zambia, has emerged as a central figure in the aftermath of her husband Edgar Lungu's death. The phrase, "Esther Lungu breaks silence," suggests a pivotal moment where she publicly addresses her husband's passing, his final days, and the surrounding controversies. Based on posts found on X, Esther Lungu revealed in a South African court that Edgar Lungu fled Zambia due to fears of persecution by the current government under President Hakainde Hichilema, HH. She also alleged that delays in medical treatment in 2023 exacerbated his terminal esophageal cancer, a claim that adds emotional weight to her narrative. This breaking of silence is not just a personal act of grief, but a strategic move in a politically charged environment, positioning Esther as a voice for her late husband's legacy and grievances. Edgar Lungu, Zambia's president from 2015 to 2021, was a polarizing figure, admired by supporters for his populist policies, but criticized for alleged authoritarianism and economic mismanagement. Esther's decision to speak out, especially in a foreign court, evokes sympathy, outrage, and curiosity. Her revelation about Lungu's cancer diagnosis and alleged mistreatment by the Zambian government taps into universal themes of suffering, injustice, and loss. The public, both in Zambia and internationally, is drawn to her story as a widow defending her husband's dignity while navigating a fraught political landscape. Political and personal dimensions. Esther's statements carry dual weight. They are both a widow's plea and a political weapon. By claiming that Lungu feared persecution, she challenges the legitimacy of the current Zambian government's actions. The accusation of delayed medical treatment suggests negligence or malice, potentially implicating state institutions. This narrative resonates with Lungu's supporters, who may see it as evidence of a vendetta against their leader. However, it risks alienating those who view Lungu's presidency as problematic, creating a polarized emotional response. The court setting in South Africa amplifies the drama, as it suggests Zambia's internal conflicts have spilled onto an international stage, with Esther as the protagonist. Public reaction and media amplification. Posts on X indicate significant public and media attention to Esther's statements. For example, at Zambian Observer and at Diamond Zambia highlighted her claims of persecution, while at Coastal Watchdog emphasized the medical delay angle. These posts reflect a mix of sensationalism and genuine concern, shaping public perception. The emotional hook is further strengthened by the imagery of a grieving widow confronting a powerful government, a narrative that resonates across cultures and political divides. Yet, the veracity of her claims remains contentious, as X posts are not conclusive evidence and require critical scrutiny. Implications for Zambia's political landscape. Esther's decision to break her silence could galvanize opposition supporters, particularly those loyal to Lungu's Patriotic Front (PF) party. It may also strain Zambia-South Africa relations, given the legal battle over Lungu's burial. The emotional hook, therefore, is not just about Esther's personal grief, but about how her words could reshape political alliances, public sentiment, and even international diplomacy. The question invites reflection on whether her silence breaking is a calculated move to reclaim agency or a spontaneous outpouring of grief, or both. The final days of Edgar Lungu. Edgar Lungu died far from the country he once led, in South Africa. Sources close to the family say he had fled Zambia out of fear of political persecution. During his time in exile, Lungu was reportedly dealing with serious health problems, both physical and emotional. Esther Lungu now says that in those final moments, Edgar was more concerned about how history would judge him than how his body would be received back home. His only verbalized wish, "Don't let Hichilema come to my funeral." Not out of hatred, she says, but out of pain. Edgar Lungu's final days in South Africa are shrouded in mystery and controversy, as described in X posts. Esther Lungu revealed that Lungu left Zambia for South Africa due to fears of persecution by the Zambian government, where he was diagnosed with terminal esophageal cancer. His death in South Africa and the subsequent legal battle over his burial suggests his final days were marked by illness, exile, and political tension. This section explores the circumstances of his departure, his health crisis, and the implications of his death abroad. Why South Africa? Lungu's presence in South Africa raises questions about his motivations and the political climate in Zambia. Esther's court submissions claim he fled due to persecution fears, a serious allegation against the Hichilema administration. This suggests Lungu felt unsafe in Zambia, possibly due to investigations into his administration's alleged corruption or political rivalries. South Africa, with its advanced medical facilities and proximity to Zambia, may have been a logical destination for both safety and treatment. However, the lack of detailed public records about his medical care leaves room for speculation about whether he sought treatment too late or if, as Esther claims, Zambia's government delayed his access to care. Health crisis and alleged delays. The diagnosis of esophageal cancer, a disease with a low survival rate if advanced, adds a tragic dimension to Lungu's story. Esther's allegation that treatment delays in 2023 worsened his condition points to potential systemic failures or political interference. Without concrete evidence, this claim remains contentious, but it fuels narratives of injustice among Lungu's supporters. The emotional weight of a former president dying abroad, possibly due to inadequate care, intensifies the controversy and public sympathy. Political exile or strategic move. Lungu's departure to South Africa could be interpreted as either a desperate escape or a strategic retreat. As a former president, he may have sought to leverage South Africa's legal system to protect his interests or legacy. His death abroad complicates Zambia's national narrative, as it raises questions about whether he was forced out or chose to leave. The absence of clear documentation leaves this open to interpretation, but Esther's statements frame it as a forced exile, adding to the emotional and political complexity. Impact on legacy. Lungu's final days in South Africa underscore the fragility of political power and health. His death abroad, rather than in Zambia, may be seen by supporters as a national embarrassment or betrayal, while critics might argue it reflects his administration's failures. This question sets the stage for understanding the broader implications of his death and Esther's role in shaping his posthumous narrative. A rift beyond repair. The rivalry between Hakainde Hichilema and Edgar Lungu is one of Zambia's most defining political feuds. In 2021, when HH won the presidency, it marked not just a transition of power, but a deep shift in how Zambia treated its former leaders. Lungu felt targeted. His family was investigated. Properties were seized, and his legacy, once admired by many, was quickly shadowed by legal battles and public accusations. According to Esther, it was this treatment that convinced him he no longer had a home in Zambia. The phrase, "a rift beyond repair," likely refers to the deep political and social divisions in Zambia, exacerbated by Lungu's death and Esther's allegations. The rift primarily involves tensions between Lungu's Patriotic Front (PF) and Hichilema's United Party for National Development (UPND), but it extends to broader societal divisions over Lungu's legacy, governance, and the handling of his death. This section examines the nature of this rift, its roots, and whether reconciliation is possible. Roots of the rift. The political divide between PF and UPND dates back to Zambia's competitive elections, particularly the 2021 election where Hichilema defeated Lungu. Lungu's presidency was marked by economic challenges, allegations of corruption, and suppression of dissent, which polarized the electorate. His supporters view him as a champion of the poor, while critics accuse him of mismanagement and authoritarianism. Esther's claims of persecution and medical neglect deepen this divide, framing Hichilema's government as vindictive. Esther's role in widening the rift. Esther Lungu's court submissions in South Africa, accusing the Zambian government of persecution and negligence, have intensified tensions. Her refusal to allow a state funeral presided over by Hichilema, as noted in ex post, signals a personal and political rejection of the current regime. This act could solidify the PF's narrative of victimhood, rallying supporters but alienating moderates who seek unity. The rift is not just political but personal, as Esther positions herself as a defender of her husband's honor against a government she perceives as hostile. Societal impact. The rift affects Zambian society broadly, with social media reflecting polarized sentiment. Supporters of Lungu may view Esther's actions as courageous, while UPND supporters might see them as divisive or opportunistic. The legal battle in South Africa over Lungu's burial further internationalizes the conflict, potentially embarrassing Zambia's government and deepening public distrust. The question of whether the rift is beyond repair hinges on whether political leaders and civil society can bridge the gap through dialogue, or if mutual accusations will perpetuate division. Prospects for reconciliation. Healing the rift requires addressing grievances on both sides. Hichilema's government could offer transparency about Lungu's treatment and burial arrangements to counter Esther's allegations. Meanwhile, PF leaders must avoid exploiting the situation for political gain. The role of neutral institutions like Zambia's judiciary or traditional leaders could be crucial. However, the emotional intensity of Esther's claims and the polarized political climate suggest reconciliation will be challenging. The unspoken letter. Though never officially published, there are claims that Edgar Lungu penned a personal letter letter just days before his death. That letter, reportedly addressed to his family and the nation, allegedly contained a rejection of state funeral honors under HH's leadership, an appeal for unity among his supporters, and a plea that President Hichilema not be present at his burial ceremony. Esther Lungu says she was the only one he trusted to convey this final message. The unspoken letter is a cryptic reference, possibly to a document or statement by Edgar Lungu that has not been publicly revealed, but is alluded to in Esther's court submissions or public discourse. Posts suggest Lungu expressed wishes about his funeral, including not wanting Hichilema to preside over it or to be buried in Zambia. This section explores the potential nature, significance, and impact of this letter or its equivalent. What could the unspoken letter be? The term unspoken letter may refer to a written or verbal directive from Lungu about his final wishes, shared privately with Esther or close confidants. According to Smankumba's post, Esther claimed Lungu confided in historian Sishiwa about not wanting to return to Zambia or have a state funeral. This could be the letter, a formal or informal expression of Lungu's desires, possibly written during his illness to ensure his legacy was protected. Its unspoken nature suggests it has not been fully disclosed or verified, adding intrigue. Significance of the letter. If such a letter exists, it could be a bombshell in Zambia's political landscape. It might contain Lungu's reflections on his presidency, accusations against the government, or instructions for his family and supporters. By explicitly rejecting a state funeral or Hichilema's involvement, the letter would symbolize Lungu's distrust of the current regime, reinforcing the narrative of persecution. Its secrecy fuels speculation, as its contents could either unify Lungu's supporters or deepen divisions if seen as inflammatory. Esther's use of the letter. Esther's reference to Lungu's wishes in court suggests she is using this letter, literal or figurative, to justify her actions, such as opposing a state funeral in Zambia. This strategic move amplifies her role as the keeper of Lungu's legacy, but it risks being perceived as manipulative if the letter's authenticity or context is questioned. Without public disclosure, the letter remains a mysterious element, its impact limited to Esther's narrative and the trust of her audience. Potential outcomes. The revelation of the letter's contents could either clarify Lungu's intentions or escalate the conflict. If it explicitly criticizes Hichilema's government, it could rally PF supporters but alienate moderates. If it is a personal document focused on family wishes, it might evoke sympathy but have less political impact. The unspoken nature keeps it a wild card, shaping public perception through speculation rather than fact. Zambians react, division or reflection. The nation's reaction has been mixed. Some see Lungu's final request as understandable, given how he was treated. Others call it bitter, even dangerous, for national unity. Supporters of the Patriotic Front (PF) have rallied behind the former First Lady, while UPND members argue that such a request disrespects the dignity of the state. Social media has erupted into debate, with hashtags like #LetLunguRest and #HonorFinalWishes trending nationwide. The question, Zambians react, division or reflection, addresses the public's response to Lungu's death, Esther's allegations, and the burial controversy. Posts reveal a mix of outrage, sympathy, and skepticism, reflecting Zambia's polarized society. This section examines these reactions, their causes, and whether they signal deeper division or a moment of national introspection. Public reactions on X. Posts highlight varied sentiments. Supporters of Lungu, as seen in posts by @Zambian Observer and @Buyoya Jonah, express anger over alleged persecution and medical neglect, viewing Esther's actions as a stand against injustice. Others, likely UPND supporters, may question her motives or the validity of her claims, though such perspectives are less prominent in the provided posts. The emotional intensity of these reactions, amplified by Esther's court filings and the international legal battle, suggests division rather than unity. Division, a polarized nation. The division stems from Zambia's political history. Lungu's supporters see him as a victim of political vendettas, while critics view his presidency as a period of decline. Esther's accusations of persecution and her refusal of a state funeral deepen this divide, as they challenge the government's legitimacy. The burial dispute, with the Zambian government seeking to repatriate Lungu's remains against Esther's wishes, symbolizes this rift, turning a private matter into a public battle. Reflection, a chance for unity. Despite the division, Lungu's death could prompt reflection. His presidency, though controversial, was part of Zambia's democratic journey. A national mourning process could encourage dialogue about governance, healthcare access, and political reconciliation. However, Esther's confrontational stance and the government's insistence on a state funeral make reflection difficult, as both sides prioritize control over the narrative. Social media's role. X amplifies these reactions, with posts shaping public opinion in real time. The platform's immediacy can deepen divisions by spreading unverified claims, but it also offers a space for reflection if moderates and civil society engage constructively. The question remains whether Zambians will use this moment to heal or further entrench their differences. The funeral dilemma. HH's difficult choice. As funeral plans for Edgar Lungu unfold, the question remains: will President Hichilema attend? Should he? Government officials initiate initially prepared for a state funeral, with HH expected to lead the ceremony. But following Esther Lungu's statements, that plan has come under intense scrutiny. Sources inside State House suggest that HH is considering a low-profile response in order to avoid further inflaming tensions. This moment is not just about protocol, it's about legacy, reconciliation, and healing. The funeral dilemma refers to President Hichilema's challenge in handling Edgar Lungu's funeral amid Esther's opposition and public scrutiny. Ex-posts indicate the Zambian government seeks a state funeral, while Esther prefers a private burial in South Africa, citing Lungu's wishes and alleged persecution. This section explores Hichilema's options, their implications, and the political tightrope he walks. Hichilema's position. As president, Hichilema must balance respect for Lungu's legacy with political realities. A state funeral is customary for former presidents, symbolizing national unity and closure. However, Esther's rejection, backed by claims of persecution, and Lungu's wish to exclude Hichilema, complicates this tradition. Forcing a state funeral risks accusations of disrespecting Lungu's wishes, while allowing a private burial in South Africa could be seen as a diplomatic failure or admission of guilt. Political implications. Hichilema's decision will shape his government's image. A state funeral could project magnanimity but alienate Lungu's supporters if perceived as coercive. A private burial might appease Esther but weaken Hichilema's authority, especially if PF supporters frame it as a victory. The international dimension. South Africa's court halting the burial adds pressure as it could embarrass Zambia's government. Public perception and legacy. Hichilema's choice will influence his legacy as a leader who either unified or divided Zambia. A transparent, inclusive approach, perhaps negotiating with Esther to honor Lungu's wishes while ensuring national participation, could mitigate the dilemma. However, the polarized climate and Esther's firm stance make compromise difficult. Strategic options. Hichilema could pursue a hybrid solution, such as a memorial service in Zambia and a private burial in South Africa, or engage neutral mediators to negotiate with Esther. The dilemma underscores the challenge of governing a divided nation while respecting a predecessor's controversial legacy. Esther Lungu, widow or warrior. Esther Lungu has emerged not only as a grieving widow, but also as a fierce protector of her husband's legacy. She's made media appearances, granted exclusive interviews, and refused to stay silent. Some see her actions as bold and necessary. Others accuse her of deepening division at a time when the country needs unity. But whatever side you're on, one thing is certain. Esther Lungu's voice has reignited a national debate about power, respect, and the memory of a fallen president. The question, Esther Lungu, widow or warrior, captures the dual role Esther plays as both a grieving spouse and a fierce advocate for her husband's legacy. Her court submissions, refusal of a state funeral, and allegations of persecution position her as a warrior, while her personal loss evokes sympathy as a widow. This section explores these roles, their interplay, and their impact on Zambia's political landscape. Esther as widow. As Lungu's widow, Esther embodies grief and loyalty, defending her husband's memory against perceived slights. Her emotional court statements about his cancer and persecution fears humanize her, garnering sympathy from supporters and even some neutrals. The image of a widow fighting for her husband's dignity is powerful, resonating with cultural values of family and honor in Zambia. Esther as warrior. Esther's actions, filing a court response in South Africa, rejecting a state funeral, and accusing the government of negligence, cast her as a warrior. She is not passively mourning, but actively challenging the Zambian government's authority. Her strategic use of Lungu's alleged wishes, e.g. the unspoken letter, and the international legal stage suggest political acumen, positioning her as a leader in the PF's resistance against Hichilema. Balancing both roles. Esther's dual identity amplifies her influence. As a widow, she gains moral authority. As a warrior, she wields political power. This combination makes her a formidable figure, capable of rallying Lungu's base, but risking alienation of moderates who see her as politicizing greed. Her success depends on maintaining credibility while navigating Zambia's polarized politics. Impact on Zambia. Esther's role could either deepen divisions or inspire reconciliation, depending on her future actions. As a widow, she could call for unity in her husband's memory. As a warrior, she might escalate the conflict, strengthening the PF's opposition. Her legacy will be shaped by how she balances these identities in the coming months. Conclusion. Legacy of a divided Zambia. Edgar Lungu's final wish may never be officially acknowledged by the government, but it has stirred the hearts of millions. Should a president's personal plea be honored, even if it challenges national customs? Or is it more important to rise above politics in depth? Zambia must now decide how to remember Edgar Chagwa Lungu, not just as a politician or a president, but as a man, a father, and a citizen whose final request continues to echo echo across a divided nation. The final question, legacy of a divided Zambia, reflects on the long-term impact of Lungu's death, Esther's actions, and the burial controversy on Zambia's national identity and unity. This section examines Lungu's legacy, the current crisis, and whether Zambia can overcome its divisions to forge a unified future. Edgar Lungu's legacy. Lungu's presidency was a defining period in Zambia's history, marked by economic struggles, infrastructure development, and political polarization. His supporters credit him with populist policies, while critics highlight debt and governance issues. His death in exile and the burial dispute risk overshadowing his achievements, framing his legacy as one of division and tragedy. The current crisis. The burial controversy, fueled by Esther's allegations and the South African court's intervention, has reignited political tensions. The government's push for a state funeral versus Esther's preference for a private burial symbolizes the broader PFU-PND divide. This crisis could define Zambia's political trajectory, either entrenching division or prompting reconciliation. Path to unity. A unified legacy requires compromise. Hichilema could honor Lungu's contributions while addressing Esther's concerns, perhaps through a national memorial. Esther could soften her stance to allow shared mourning. Civil society, traditional leaders, and the media must foster dialogue to prevent further polarization. Future outlook. Zambia's ability to move beyond division depends on leadership and public will. Lungu's legacy could inspire reflection on governance and unity, but without concerted efforts, the current crisis may deepen the rift, leaving a legacy of a divided Zambia.